You're watching Cricket World TV. It will be the West Indies who play Sri Lanka in Sunday's ICC World Twenty20 final. They have absolutely thrashed Australia in the second semi-final today. I'm John Pennington. I'm joined again by Daniel Grummitt. Hello, Daniel.
Good afternoon, John.
Now, earlier in the day, of course, Australia's women beat the West Indies in a game that, well, we've had two very one-sided games, haven't we?
Yes, Australia easily won the last one, easily lost this one, really.
So just to give you a brief summary of the game, the West Indies posted 205 for 4. Australia bowled out for 131. And that is what's the margin of victory, Daniel? My maths isn't too hot. The scorecard just at 74 runs. I mean, that is a big margin. They were 43 for 6, Australia, and that you don't often come back from a score of that nature.
No, George Bailey tried his best with 63, but unfortunately, when he went 111 for 7, it was all over.
He struck those 63 from just 29 deliveries. He batted very, very well, but he just had no support. And by that time, he was batting with Matthew Wade, Patrick Cummins, so didn't have the support. Let's just take you through the scorecard. The West Indies winning the toss and unsurprisingly deciding to bat first. Johnson Charles made 10, and Chris Gale, he had a lot of fun out there today. 75 not out in 41 deliveries, 5 fours and 6 sixes, none of them particularly small. Marlon Samuels made 26. Dwayne Bravo back in the side today made 37 in 31 deliveries. And Kieran Pollard, perhaps his best innings of the tournament so far, 38 in 15 deliveries. He was dismissed from the very last ball of the innings. 3 fours and 3 sixes for him, and followers of the West Indies will have been delighted to see him hitting some form once again. The bowling figures for Australia: Mitchell Starc 1 for 32, Shane Watson 0 for 35, Pat Cummins 2 for 36, Xavier Doherty 1 for 48, Brad Hogg 0 for 21, David Hussey 0 for 22. So Australia chasing 206, a tall order. Warner bowled Badri for 1, Shane Watson bowled Badri for 7. A massive double blow at the top of the order for them. Michael Hussey pushed up to bat at 3, Corton bowled Samuels for 18, Cameron White made just 4, and David Hussey got a duck. Those two were dismissed by Ravi Rampal. George Bailey, we've spoken about him, a valiant effort in vain, 63 in 29 deliveries. Matthew Wade made 1, Cummins 15, Mitchell Starc was unbeaten on 3, Brad Hogg made 7, and Xavier Doherty made 8. The bowling figures for the West Indies, pretty impressive stuff. Badri 2 for 16, Marlon Samuels 1 for 26, Rampal 3 for 27, Nareen 2 for 19, Russell 0 for 25. That was a 1 over, so that was when Bailey got after him a bit. And Darren Savvy 0 for 11. Kieran Pollard 1 over 2 for 6. So we'll begin our look ahead to the final later on in the day. Daniel, your sort of reaction to how good were the West Indies today?
Well, they do rely a lot on Chris Gale, and they showed that today. He didn't face a lot of the strike first up, but then when he did, him and Dwayne Bravo and then Kieran Pollard at the end were just far too good, and poor old Xavier Doherty went for 25 in the last over, and that just... Australia never got back in the game, really, and that was that. I
saw a tweet from Aaron Kumar, actually, who's going to be joining us fairly soon, that well done Australia on getting 112, but it's not quite enough to get through this time. That was the score they managed to get against Pakistan to qualify, but not enough. I was, and I'll raise this with Aaron in a moment, quite impressed with the way the West Indies fielded today. They weren't so impressive for me against New Zealand, but today they didn't drop anything. They looked very sharp.
No, they do have some very good fielders, Kieran Pollard, Andre Russell, to name just 2 of them, and they've certainly kept up with Australia in the field, and Chris Gale, again, is the key for them, isn't he, really, with 11 boundaries, and him and Pollard finally came off for the first time in the tournament, 38 or 15 balls, and only Bailey matched them. It wasn't enough.
Now, interesting head-to-head between the two sides that will contest the final, West Indies and Sri Lanka. They've played 4 times, all of them in World Twenty20 cricket, and Sri Lanka have won every single time.
Well, I think it's going to be a repeat, really. It's going to be a dusty pitch, I think, like it was yesterday in the semi-final against Pakistan. It's a completely different pitch today, a lot flatter, a lot faster.
Okay. And sorry to cut you off there, Daniel, because Aaron's on the line ready to join us. Hello, Aaron.
Hey, JP, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty well, but I think you must be doing even better after that performance from the West Indies.
Yeah, it was a wonderful performance, wasn't it? A really, really great team performance. There's been signs throughout the tournament they're kind of getting into shape, and everyone's been talking about them as potential winners. But I think everything just clicked in place today.
Now, Chris Gale, your main man, he was fantastic today. 75 not out in sort of 41 balls. He was sort of back to his best, perhaps. I mean, we saw him take Australia apart at the Oval back in 2009. I think you were there. You're certainly watching it. Would you sort of compare the two performances?
It was slightly different in a way, wasn't it? Because at the Oval, he just went from ball one, just absolutely decimated Brett Lee and everyone that came in his way. I thought today was a little bit more measured, if you can use that word with Chris Gale, but it was very, very intelligent because Australia clearly had a plan, which was to target Chris Gale. They knew that Chris Gale was, I don't want to say the only man, but clearly the main man for the West Indies. And what he did was early on let Jonathan Charles take some strike, let Samuel take some strike, and those guys were really hitting the ball well. He played himself in, and it almost took the intensity out of the Australian attack, and by the end he was just able to sort of launch along with Pollard, and they just ran right in the end.
Well, Pollard, you say he's not had a brilliant tournament until he got himself into some nick against New Zealand. Important for him to get some runs because, as you say, West Indies don't want to be sort of pigeonholed as if Chris Gale fails, they fail. It's important for the likes of Kieran Pollard, Dwayne Bravo coming back as well to contribute with runs as well.
Absolutely, no, that's right. I mean, it was almost tailor-made, wasn't it, for Pollard? So he's hardly scored many runs this tournament, but to come in with just about 4 overs left, with many runs on the board already, it was almost, he had a great license there to go and play his shots.
And a brave decision and a good decision to open the bowling with Samuel Badree. That double blow at the top was perhaps you could argue a blow from which Australia never recovered.
Yeah, it was always going to be difficult for them. If you look at Australia, how they've played throughout the tournament, I mean, they've put a lot on their top three, haven't they? Watson, Warner and Michael Hussey. So you did feel once they lost that wicket, as you say, Badree got Warner in the first over, it was going to be difficult. We did see signs against Pakistan that they were struggling perhaps with the spins. Obviously, West Indies backed themselves to play 2 spinners, but it was interesting, wasn't it? Because obviously it was quite ironic. They sort of just got past that 112, and I saw some people on Twitter saying that, you know, the last game against Pakistan, 112 was enough to qualify, but unfortunately it's not on this occasion.
And as you say, it was a good all-round performance. I was particularly impressed by the way they fielded. They didn't drop anything. They weren't too hot against New Zealand in the field, but no real slip-ups today. No,
absolutely. I mean, you would say the only thing was Bailey at the end was swinging away, but that's credit to him. He played a good innings. But no, you can't really. It's almost the sort of performance the West Indies would have dreamed of. I mean, you sort of think, what performance would they have hoped for going into the match? You think score 200 and then put pressure and then take earlier wickets. I think it's exactly what they would have hoped for, and it's set up the final nicely now. Now,
final sort of point with you, Aaron. The head-to-head between these two sides in 2020 internationals. They met twice in the 2009 World Cup. Sri Lanka won both times. They met again in 2010. Sri Lanka won. They met earlier in this tournament. Sri Lanka won. So West Indies bidding to make it 5th time lucky.
Yeah, I mean, as you say, Sri Lanka are going to go into this as absolute favourites. They've been playing some fantastic cricket, and so a lot of their senior players. We don't know how many. I'm thinking of Jar Wardner and your Dilshans and your Sangakkar. We don't know how many more big events they've got. So they'll be really desperate to win it in front of their home crowd. But from the West Indies point of view, if they play the sort of fearless cricket that they have today, they'll feel they can beat anyone, and you never know. The actual, much of the crowd support is going to be a big factor for Sri Lanka in their favour. It also is going to add to some pressure, and West Indies will be hoping to exploit that. Super stuff,
Aaron. Great to catch up with you as ever. We'll be talking to you after the final, and until then, it's goodbye from us.
Thanks a lot, JP. Okay.
Yes, interesting point he makes there about the pressure that Sri Lanka will be under in the final. It could work against them. The West Indies maybe not so much as expected of them.
I think that was a very good point from Aaron. I think Sri Lanka and Pakistan in the semi-final looked a lot more nervous than the West Indies have done today. And like he says, West Indies could be carefree and play their shots, and Sri Lanka will be absolutely desperate to win. I think Sangakkar and Jai Wardle get too many more chances to win a global event.
Well, they're looking for, yes, if the West Indies are looking for 5th time lucky to beat Sri Lanka are looking for 4th time lucky in a world final, having made the 2007 and 2011 50 over World Cup finals, as well as the 2009 ICC World 2020. So plenty to play for them. We'll continue looking ahead to that final in a short moment. I just want to briefly reflect on the other semi-final we had today between Australia and the West Indies women's teams. It was won again convincingly by Australia by 28 runs. They posted 115 for 7. The experience of Lisa Sthalekar standing them in good stead. She made 23 to top score. The West Indies, they lost early wickets. They got behind the run rate. They then lost their last 5 wickets for just 11 runs. Complete contrast to the way the men played. Julie Hunter took 5 for 22 for Australia. She was the first Australian to take a 5-wicket haul in women's 2020 internationals, the 6th overall and only the 2nd player to do it at a 2020 World Cup. So a mighty impressive performance from the Australian women. Daniel, your brief sort of comment on that game?
Well, we've definitely got the 2 most efficient women's sides in the final.
We've got the 2 best teams in the final by some distance.
Australia and England, of course. And today Australia showed why. They're just a little bit better than the 3rd place and 4th best teams, and England are probably going to be a bit better than them tomorrow, hopefully.
And Australia's captain, of course, is one of my most favourite names in cricket, sort of Jodie Fields. She's a wicketkeeper, ideally named for that, and in fact we can hear from her now. These are sort of excerpts from her press conference after the game, looking back on the performance and looking ahead to the final on Sunday.
Yeah, I think it would have been nice probably to get more along the lines of 140, but we knew that the runs on the border would be tough to get, and we bowled very well, so I was very happy that we were able to restrict them. The West Indies girls actually bowled really well to conditions. Their spinners slowed it right up, made it very difficult to score down the ground, probably later as the innings went on, so you sort of then had to resort to square shots. But yeah, I thought that we did well to get 116 after our pretty disastrous start, and then we just bowled well to win the game. I'm actually pretty happy with how our batting's happened throughout the tournament. While we haven't had anyone with big scores, we've always had a consistent run chase, and we might have lost double wickets, but we've always had the next guys come in and keep the scoreboard ticking over. And even today I thought that went really well, and see what happens during the final, but hopefully one of those girls will click and we will get a big score.
Jodie Fields there talking to the media after Australia beat the West Indies by 28 runs earlier on today. Okay, let's continue our look ahead to the finals. Before we do so, I want to talk about our sort of prediction league we've had going on. That's Daniel, myself, Andrew, show's producer Aaron, who you've been hearing from, Chetan, who you've been hearing from throughout the World 2020, and we can't be separated. We've all got 18 correct predictions, so Andrew and Aaron went for the West Indies today, the rest of us went for Australia, but we are going to be separated over the weekend because we have lots of different sort of elements to the predictions of the final. Daniel, just to start with you at this point, Sri Lanka or the West Indies to win the final?
It has to be Sri Lanka for me. West Indies do have a chance, but I still think Sri Lanka on home conditions have got to be the best.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Sri Lanka to win as well. What about the women, England or Australia?
Well, I think heart and head says England, really.
Yeah, I do think, I'm going to come and discuss this maybe a bit more. I do think Australia got more of a chance than some people are making out, but England should be too strong. While we're talking about the prediction league, incidentally, we've been running polls and things on Facebook and Twitter over the course of the tournament. Apparently today, our fans on Facebook have beaten us because they've got both right. So well done to everybody on our Facebook page who's taken the time to vote. And of course, if you're not on our Facebook page, you can find it by going to facebook.com/Cricket World. We're also on Twitter, cricket_world, or if you go to cricketworld.com, our Twitter and links and Facebook and the rest of it are fairly clear for all to see. Okay, so we know Sri Lanka will play the West Indies in the final on Sunday. I referenced the head-to-head there when I was chatting with Aaron. It's a remarkable record. Sri Lanka won the first 3 games between the two sides batting first. They won the 4th game batting second earlier on in this tournament. But it's a little bit uncharted territory for both teams. The West Indies have never reached the final. Sri Lanka have obviously never won in a final. They've never won a 2020 tournament at home. What do you make of it, Daniel? I think, as I say, we sort of said Aaron's got a very good point about pressure, but we're both going for Sri Lanka, aren't we? So we think they'll handle it.
Well, until Aaron mentioned that, I thought it was easily going to be Sri Lanka, but now I'm not so sure.
So the seeds of doubt in your mind. Now, so I've written down here in my notes before we sort of researched their head-to-head semi-final 2009. Sri Lanka won it pretty easily. That was the nearest to a final knockout game, but very different teams and different conditions. But and the way West Indies will load their team with all-rounders, Dwayne Bravo back, although he's not bowling. Andre Russell didn't really do an awful lot today, but Kieran Pollard did.
Well, Chris Gale did pick up a muscle injury today. That could be important for the final if he's fit. Can he bowl? Can he even bat? Can he play? Because they do rely heavily on him.
They do, and I don't think
assume he's going to be fit. And
he didn't
bowl.
Field. That's right, but obviously didn't field and didn't bowl. I mean, not a bad fielder to have in reserve, is it, Dwayne Smith? Not that I'm suggesting for a moment there's anything untoward going on, because Chris Gale was very clearly struggling with some sort of side strain or muscle strain. I mean, it goes without saying that they will do whatever they can do, and probably try and do more to get him on the field, even if he's not fully fit. But the problem there, he won't be allowed to substitute, because if he goes off, pre-existing injury rules, you can't have a sub. So it's a tricky one for the West Indies. But yeah, an unfit Chris Gale, or Chris Gale not 100%, does slightly perhaps limit the West Indies' potential.
Yeah, he's a big player for them, there's no doubt.
Well, we'll be keeping a close eye on that game, live scores and the rest. Chetan and Narula will be in the ground tweeting away for you, so do keep an eye on the game on Sunday. We'll be live after the game. I want to just finish the show with a little bit of a preview of England against Australia in the women's game. If you want a little bit more stats and things, you can go on to cricketworld.com. There's a video there, and I'm looking ahead to the game. England are the overwhelming favourites for this one, Daniel. If we look at the odds from Bet365, they're 7-2 on. Australia 11-4 against. That's quite a margin on what is a two-horse race.
Well, England are just, over the last 2-3 years, they've become so efficient, so consistent. I think they only lost one of the last 25 2020 internationals. I mean, it's an amazing record in such an unpredictable game. Sarah Taylor at the top of the order, along with Charlotte Edwards, are easily the two leading run scorers, I think I'm right in saying, in the format. So they've got to be overwhelming favourites.
You mentioned, the batters there. I sort of wrote down Edwards and Taylor, but the bowlers have done a fantastic job as well. Catherine Brunt and Anya Shrubsole, that is as good an opening pair of bowlers there are in women's cricket. And then Laura Marsh, Holly Colvin, Danny Wyatt, Danny Hayes will come on and bowl their spin to back things up. They are phenomenally...
And their fielding with Lydia Greenway as well is amazing, really.
They are a phenomenally talented bunch of all-round cricketers, so you can see why they've been the dominant force over the last sort of 3 years, 2 to 5, I'd say more than that, 3 to 4 years. But Australia, reigning champions, know what it takes to win the World 2020, held their nerve last time out against New Zealand in a tight finish. It won't be easy for England.
No, it certainly won't be easy. They know they've got the second best side to face, and they're probably a little bit harshly on the betting, the 11-4 against. It's might be a little closer than that, but I still think England will have to do something wrong if they're going to lose it, rather than anything else, I think.
Australia, for me, looked very impressive early on today. Yes, they made a poor start to their innings, but they recovered, which is not really what the men could do later on as it happened. And they've got a good recent record in Asia. They comfortably beat India, I should say, a little bit earlier in the year. So, yeah, I agree with you that 11-4 is very, very generous. But for me, I still think England are going to be too good. But you'll have to tune in on Sunday to find out whether our predictions are indeed correct. And that is indeed all we've got time for on today's issue of Cricket World Live. Thank you to Daniel for joining me in the studio again. Thank you to Aaron for his perceptive insight as ever. Andrew's been beaming away in the background producing, so thank you to him. Until Sunday, it's goodbye from us.